Il senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale. Non è un'idea. Innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire. Non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli. Il senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale. Non è un'idea. Innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire. Non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli.
la civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buonasera a tutti.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to everybody here and to all of those that are connected online, especially from Venezuela. Good evening, everyone. The human existence is an inexhaustible friendship. This is the title of the Rimini meeting, and it is linked with the topic we're going to deal with tonight with our guests: peace and unity. These are very important words. So let's see how José Gregorio, with his life and experience, can help us with this. So we have high-profile guests here tonight, and they're also dear friends from Venezuela, from Italy, and we're really grateful to them for being here. Please give them a big round of applause.
In primis, Sua Eminenza il Cardinale.
First of all, Cardinal Baltazar Porras Cardozo, who is the Archbishop of Caracas, Venezuela. We would like, first of all, to thank you for being here at the Rimini meeting. For us, it is a very strong message, the fact that you have opened the doors of Venezuela to the communion and liberation movement. So thanks to Cardinal Porras Cardozo, our movement is now present in Venezuela. And then we have Dr. José Manuel Colmenarez, Chema for his friends, who's a great friend, who's well known in his country, Tocuyo, but in the whole of Venezuela for the work he carries out as a doctor. He is the director of a clinic called Oidos, Nariz is Garganta, ear, nose, and throat, and is also president of the Locatelli Foundation. Welcome. Then we have Dr. Chiara Locatelli. So we have two doctors here with us. She's from Bologna. Chiara works at the Neonatology department of the Policlinico Sant'Orsola in Bologna. She developed the Giacomo pathway, and that's how we met, actually. It is a pathway for children who have a very small life expectancy, and she is responsible for a clinic for certain specific disease like the Down syndrome. Thank you, Chiara, for being here with us. And then, well, it is not easy to introduce Franco Nembrini. You know him, you all know him. He is a writer, he is a scholar, but above all, he is a great friend of Venezuela and also a great personal friend of mine. Tonight's meeting is about an experience. Well, I don't know whether you already visited the exhibition, but it is a very particular experience. Imagine a city like Rome. There is the funeral of a doctor, and all of a sudden, 1 million people go to the funeral, and at the end of the ceremony, these people say, "This doctor is ours," and they accompany him to the cemetery. So it is a man who, on the day of his death, was capable of reuniting the whole of the people of Venezuela. Caracas in 1919 had 100,000 inhabitants. 30,000 people participated in the funeral. Politicians, businessmen, everyone was there. So from his very first day in heaven, he managed to unite the Venezuelan people. A great writer said, "Today we bury not a man, but a human ideal." We all had the desire to be good because of him. For those who have visited the exhibition, well, I am sure that you really experienced firsthand this great desire. Someone who became the most important unification factor of the people of Venezuela. So we would like to see how his work help us understand if unity and peace are possible. This is a great challenge today. So I would like to start with Cardinal Porras Cardozo, because it is a privilege to listen to him talk about José Gregorio. So I would like to underline an aspect that you often mentioned, that is to say, this village in the Andes, in a part of Venezuela at the end of the 19th century, wasn't even on the world map, a very small village, just like the exhibition here at the C3 Pavilion is very small, but always very crowded. So that's where José Gregorio was born. What can you tell us about him? What does he represent for Venezuela and the world today? Good night, everyone. Today's world tends to make up real faces, disfiguring their image, selling us some caricature of little value because authenticity is obscured. Honest work, service to others, especially the marginalized, the primacy of God's love as the engine of life, have little relevance. Perhaps this is why when the life and work of a saint are proposed to us, it seems as if it is something not really attractive. We have to have the double experience that Ignatius of Loyola had when reading books on chivalry or lives of the saints. The first fills us with a passing enthusiasm, but it leaves an emptiness that is reversed in the second reading that brings peace and tranquility. The life of José Gregorio Hernández, doctor of the people, scientist, researcher, and innovator in medical science, believer of deep convictions, concerned for the health of all, but with a special interest for the poorest. This shocks us. His most popular image is a picture of him dressed in a dark, elegant suit with a fashionable hat and the attitude of a serious, introverted man. Equally, we can see that he was a cheerful person, loved music and dancing, and enjoyed leisure time with his family. At the same time, he was punctual and diligent in fulfilling his mission as a doctor and as a researcher. It is even more difficult to understand his life knowing that he was a man from a small, insignificant village, lost in the middle of the Venezuelan Andean mountains at a time of wars, hardship of all kinds, and without any hope of improvement in a country entangled in backwardness. However, and it is here that we must ask ourselves whether we are dealing with a man out of the ordinary, a kind of superman, or instead with the reality that adverse circumstances, when fertilized by the transforming humus of family and a humble environment in which the simplest human virtues are those that produce the transformation of human beings into good people who, with their testimony, transform their surroundings. José Gregorio Hernández had 2 lives. His life cycle goes from when he was born until he unexpectedly met his death when he was hit by a car while crossing the street. Well, this first phase of his existence was perceived and assumed quietly by those around him. From the moment of his physical death, the José Gregorio that we all carry within us was born. We could almost say resurrected. The bucolic and peaceful city of Caracas in 1919 was transformed into a buzzing crowd that spontaneously felt that this man was not another, but the deepest expression of what we all want to be, good people. From that moment on came admiration and devotion, expressed by friends who professed ideas and convictions different from his. And the most heartfelt manifestation of all social classes, who discovered in him the desire, often submerged amidst the events of everyday life, the longing to be better that we all carry within us to emerge. His message challenges us as if it were a matter of everyday life, close to us. All this was the fruit of a unity generated by the faith lived by José Gregorio that became a unifying factor then as now for the people of Venezuela. We are dealing with a person with the smell of the people. He came from a remote village in the Andean mountains where he was formed, and with discipline, seriousness, and mysticism transmitted to him by his parents, his teacher, and the village priest. A trilogy that planted in him a faith rooted in the simple circumstances of village life. Sent by his father to the capital, he became a great scientist and professor of national and international fame, who never forgot or neglected his origins. The authoritarian and anti-clerical context of his stay in Venezuela was the cradle from which he purified his faith without rancor or hatred, with a perseverance guided by the same faith. A second polychromatic facet allowed him to cultivate everything from the simplest things and traits to the demands of his profession. His best vocation as a doctor, university professor, and pioneering researcher. Faith, science, and humanity were combined with love and mastery of painting, tailoring, dance, and music. A child of his time, he dabbled in science, philosophy, and literature, leaving several publications to testify to this. A truly ordinary and multifaceted man. Thirdly, his life was conceived as a vocation, which led him to go beyond the domain of medicine. He attempted the contemplative life and priesthood, but then the good fortune of the Archbishop of Caracas brought him definitely to see God's will in his dedication, in his lay commitment as a teacher, scientist, and servant of the people, something that the Venezuelan reality itself was crying out for, and he was able to carry it out without prejudice. He compared himself with the best scientists of his time, with whom he struck up a sincere friendship despite the ideological differences. In today's world, where differences are accentuated, he simply cultivated the idea of being another of his people with no right to have privileges, but rather with the duty to serve. A prominent feature is the title of Doctor of the Poor and of Peace. In various passages of his life, his dedication to the poor is evident, always with extreme gentleness and care for each of them. And it is clear also his detachment and freedom in the face of power and his clear option for the poor. It was a universal conscience, a dimension of his life that transcended the borders of his country, immersed in his everyday life without too many references to the world around him. It was embodied in the offering of his life for world peace, which speaks of his awareness of the value and dedication of life, as well as the clarity of the universal Catholic dimension of every gesture, with a dimension of eternity. The borderless dimension of his life is not surprising. It is therefore not a mere addition that Pope Francis appointed him co-patron of the Chair of Peace at the Lateran University, a clear message that war is not the right path to peace and coexistence of peoples. Hence, the deep connection of the people with this person and how this generated different expressions. He is the catalyst for unity in a society like that of Venezuela, where confrontation and exclusion of the other are proposed as the way of society. His charm and devotion go beyond the Christian experience, which is why he attracts people of different denomination or agnostics, generating important conversions in the field of coexistence that proclaims fraternity and service as the way to true material and spiritual progress. Its artistic expressions make it a model to be imitated as a cultural reference present in people's daily life. The miracle in Latin American and Venezuelan culture is not a tangential expression of existence. The permanent miracle of fraternity and service becomes the engine of life, generating a current of gratitude for all who come close to it. I invite you to visit the exhibition The People's Doctor, the very first to be held outside Venezuela. And here I'd like to thank the Rimini meeting, and particularly the President Bernard Shaw, for the exhibition, and all the volunteers who work here. And I would like also to mention Aurora, who was my guide at the exhibition, and she had a great passion for this doctor. So thank you. In the exhibition, you can see a way of living faith that promotes common good, reconciliation, and the creation of social peace. To have his life and work present at the Rimini meeting is a hymn that helps us promote dialogue and the encounter in the diversity of thoughts and positions that lead us to integral equality, the only one that leads to peace. And I conclude with the encouraging words of Pope Francis in his message on the occasion of the beatification of the Doctor of the Poor, José Gregorio Hernández Cisneros, a significant event in the middle of the pandemic that has struck the world. And I quote, "Following the example of Dr. José Gregorio, may they be able to recognize themselves as equals, as brothers, as children of the same country. May they be willing to serve and be humble enough to let themselves be served, to help and let themselves be helped, to forgive and let themselves be forgiven. Don't forget, one to the other, or as the old lady used to say, and the others to each other, reciprocally, mutually, always." Thank you.
Grazie mille, Eminenza.
Thank you very much. And, well, in a few minutes, you really retraced many key features of José Gregorio that are extremely important, especially in today's world, for every one of us. Now we have the privilege to have two doctors, José Manuel Chema from Venezuela and Chiara from Italy. José Gregorio experience, as we heard, is not something belonging to the past, not at all. It continues today. I would like to start with Chema, because as doctor from Venezuela, and considering the very important social role of his job, and personally, I've also worked as a volunteer for him, especially in the special days that he has in his village, Tucuyo. I would like to ask him, what does it mean for a doctor from Venezuela today to engage in social work, and more in general for the whole category? What's the meaning of José Gregorio for doctors in Venezuela today? Good evening, everybody. I would like, first of all, to thank all of you for being here tonight, and also for inviting me again to this extraordinary event that is the meeting. I had the chance to be here already in 2019. Thank you. So I will answer your question from three standpoints. As a believer, as Christian Catholic, but also I can answer as a doctor and also as a patient, because I am a patient myself. Well, as Christian Catholic, I must say that we have all a duty to help the people in need, the people who are deprived. And, well, many people in Venezuela would like to become writers or scientists, would like to learn how to dance, how to sing, or they want to learn more about philosophy, as we heard also from the previous speaker. But I can answer you also as a patient, because I was a patient myself, and I had full trust in doctors. And I always prayed José Gregorio Hernández for my own health and the health of my family. Yes, but please tell us more about the job that you are carrying out, not just in Tucuyo, but that was started there. I know that now you are traveling around several regions of Venezuela. So we are seeing here beautiful pictures that you took in Tucuyo. Please tell us more about your job, because we really want to understand what is the kind of commitment of a doctor like you vis-a-vis the people in need. Well, 2 weeks ago, I was with my family, and I was telling them about the meeting in Rimini. And then my mother, who had just turned 93, gets closer to me and says, well, you need to tell them that when you were 4 or 5 years old, your father and I, we usually took you to Isnotu in the state of Toquillo, where José Gregorio Hernández was born. We used to leave at dawn, and we traveled for 4 or 5 hours by car to ask José Gregorio for grace for your health, because you always had respiratory infections, and we were so worried about this. And you had seen many doctors and specialists, but I mean, there was no improvement, and that happened more than 50 years ago. So you can imagine, I mean, to what extent this story was important, and thousands of other families from Venezuela could tell the same story, regardless of their social status. So this has been happening in my country for more than 1 century. So in Venezuela, the people asks that this doctor that has been called the doctor of the poor because of his devotion towards the deprived ones, was a popular figure. And the fact of having been there with my family probably must have had an impact in my head. Probably seeing so many people gathered around the figure of José Gregorio had an impact on me. Probably that's why I decided to study medicine. Probably it was a role model for me. So there was this ideal connection between humility, constant learning, kindness, grace, charity. He was a great man and a great Christian in the broadest possible sense. I'm sure that many professionals in medicine in Venezuela had the aspiration to become like him and to be like him. In 1995, I was going back to my little village, Tocuyo, after ending my studies, and I was the first specialist doctor specialized in ear, nose, and throat. And I used to visit for free people who could not afford paying a doctor. And I remember one day I was the only one at the clinic, and I visited just 2 people, just 2 patients for a whole day. And I was happy. I was happy because that was the very same clinic where I was born, and I was there with the people I wanted to help. Then, over time, well, we kept having these open days, and we had no idea of how this could go. Little by little, voluntary nurses, doctors, paramedics, public and private institutions joined us in this initiative, and especially people and households that had been previously helped in the past. We got support from the Army, National Army, and other security forces. And so at the end of the day, we were able to set up something huge. Not only doctors were involved. Now we are more than 100 people from different regions of the country, from different nations, from all over the world, and we represent 26 medical specializations, and we see so many people. We visit 3,000 people on average on each open day. They come there to get support, visits, and also we set up theatrical operating rooms for surgical interventions. Everything is done for free. We provide them with medication, with toys for kids, and our children pass down their best toys to these kids while they wait to be visited. And I remember that We have started also to provide food. We have served more than 1,500 meals per day. Over the last few years, I must confess that we got the support from so many people. Voluntary groups helped out in the kitchen, and even the group led by Alejandro helped us out. So thank you very much, Alejandro, for everything you did. Since the very first hours of the day, all the village residents bring food and drinks and give a hand. They collaborate, and they also host people from other cities. Taxi drivers offer free trips, restaurants, hotels, shops offer better prices and conditions. Everybody is really eager to help out. And so this village fills out with joy. And regardless of religion, sex, race, anything, they know that they're given a little contribution and they're helping out. And so this is the largest surgical team of Venezuela. So this big day is possible thanks to a large group's work that works for 6 months to organize this, because we need to set up the area around the hospital. We need to organize the areas to perform the surgical interventions. And so we start asking for help to get medication and the tools that we need. We are so happy to know that in spite of the deep crisis affecting our country, so many associations and entities have started working with us from different areas, and so help us out so much. So we got together because common good is really infectious. It affects all, layers of society. So walls are torn down, so there are no more barriers, and we can reach such an important goal together. So for more than 20 years, we have been able to carry out 8,000 surgical operations and visit more than 12,000 patients. And we are already working to repeat this initiative in 2023. And 1 month ago, I was carrying out surgical interventions in Caracas, and that was part of the activities of our foundation that is called the Stapedium. So to pay homage to the smallest muscle in our body. This is a very small muscle that is the medium ear and protects us from hearing damage. And this is also the hospital where José Gregorio Hernández was hospitalized after his accident in 1919. You see that, there is a very strong presence of his everywhere. You see holy pictures of the blessed, drawings, portraits. Some people declare that they have seen him walking around. They pray for him. They ask for his mercy. And I've seen so many images. Sometimes little children are being given an image of his before entering the operating theater. And this happens not just in Venezuela and in this city, but also in other countries, in other towns, because his fame has become so big. But now we are all waiting for José Gregorio to put into practice his knowledge and his wisdom. We want him to carry out the best treatment and diagnosis. We want him to see this sick world and give us relief faced with inequalities and problems. We have so many problems in our country. We really need to get support and help to fight against what Pope Francis named this propagation of, lack of friendship. We need to get some sort of antidote against hostility. We need special tablets and pills for mutual solidarity and friendship and mutual reconciliation. And with the scalpel, with the special scalpel, likely to perform the final surgery, uprooting the evil from our society that compromises the future of our generations. Thank you very much.
Il bene comune esiste.
The common good exists and is contagious. Well, that's incredible. And we can really hope for a miracle by José Gregorio, because we are certain that he is using his scalpel. He is still doing surgery, as you so beautifully said. Thank you, Chema.
Chiara.
Chiara. Well, at the beginning, I was a little bit embarrassed when I invited you here, because we were asking an Italian doctor to come here, someone who didn't know anything about José Gregorio before tonight, or before she was invited here. But she did her homework, actually, and I must say I am really impressed by the work you did. You read his, and you also actually used your experience as a neonatologist to be faced by life and death. So what are the aspects of the life of José Gregorio that struck you most, and that are, in a way, more or closer to what you do as a doctor? Thank you, first of all, for inviting me here, because, well, as you said, there is a great distance between what I can do and what José Gregorio used to do. I was in ICU this morning with a mom and her very ill baby, and I thought about the psalm, look for the visage of the saints so that you can rest in their words. And I thought about what José Gregorio would have done near this mom, who would run under the rain in the streets of your country to reach the homes of his patients and treat them for free. So, well, the only thing was to be there, thinking about that gaze. What struck me the most is José Gregorio's gaze, the way he looked at science, because the evidence of his story is that there was a union between science and faith, because his faith was the origin of his being a great researcher and a pioneer in the field of medicine in Venezuela and the whole of Latin America. And this was due to his passion for reality, because reality is Christ. And, well, that's what he did with his patients, and his educational and training background from the teachers he had. And he went to Paris. At the time, it was not very usual to travel to Paris from Latin America. And he met great scientists who then acknowledged his own greatness. When he went back to his village, because his father had asked him to become a doctor and to serve his people, so he went to the different hospitals in his country, and he met a nurse who was treating a patient who had a femoral fracture and was bedridden, and he had bed sores, and he was really struck by what this nun nurse did. Well, in my profession, this is the kind of way I want to look at things. And when I think about his story, I have really seen that there was a relationship, a friendship, that was a judgment on life. So there was this relationship to his teachers, with Juan Battista Castro. So it's José Gregorio that gives you a signal from heaven. He's encouraging you. He's supporting you. So he helped him in finding his vocation, his way. So this friendship is what I call communion. And I think is the inexhaustible friendship we talk about here at the Rimini meeting. And this is, in my everyday life, the way to try and find this gaze. So I try to do what my professors and teachers did, like Professor Paravicini, whom I met in New York years ago, and with whom I worked at the Columbia University in New York, not only as a professional, she's a great professional, high-level professional, but she also had a certainty in her attitude towards the babies and children and families she followed. And then there's another friend who's now doing a path of canonization, Piccinini. He said that a Christian is not scandalized by a limit, it actually embraces the limit. So this is the starting point for what we do, for the service we provide. So from this certainty, I could actually achieve fruits and results, creating a place of care in the hospital, this pathway called Giacomo, for babies born with the prenatal illnesses, disease. So these are the most precious children in a way, as their children are, as their families, are precious. Families who said yes and embraced this limit. So thanks to gynecologists, obstetricians, nurses, and many other colleagues, we created a possibility of care within the care normally provided by the hospital. And I think that we have the opportunity to live, to experience this communion, and to create places of community. I'll give you another two examples. When you are in face of the sufferance I see every day, there is the desire to actually share the pain of these patients. Sometimes it is really difficult because it's really a strong, limitless pain. But there are places, I think about an association called La Mongolfiera, families with children with disabilities. And here is where I see hope. And here is where this limit is embraced without giving up the request for happiness. So this is a place of hope. And I have to look at this hope so that I can look at my patients. And I conclude, the Cardinal said that a miracle is fraternity, a way to live faith that encourages the common good. This is what José Gregorio gave us. So we have another clinic for children with Down syndrome. And so it is a place of goodness that has been given to me by its founders, and it is now a place of beauty for new and young doctors who offer so many hours of their free time to work there. mainly for free. And this idea to favor the common good, I would like to share an experience with you. A couple of years ago, as a neonatologist, I normally meet pregnant moms, and I met these parents, and they were awaiting a baby with the Down syndrome and with the heart disease. And well, she didn't want to give up the baby, but she thought that she wouldn't be able to keep this baby. So she was in a very difficult situation. So I explained to her what it meant to take care of these babies, and I told her I would be there for her. After a couple of weeks, this mom came back, and with a completely different expression on her face, she told me her priest gave us some kind of connection to overcome this difficulty. She told her about a family who adopted a child with Down syndrome, and he said, you can give birth to this baby, and then someone will take care of him for you. So she had taken this decision, which was not easy, obviously. So the relationship to this mom was, well, really struck me, her suffering, her pain, but it was for me an example of a faith that favors the common good, this fraternity, because if there's a limit and you cannot go beyond that limit, someone else will. And I conclude with this sentence by Father Giussani, when he talks about a baby, a child called Hermano, who was called Hermano the cripple, and he was left by his mom in a cloister, and he was raised by the monks there, and he then wrote the Salve Regina, and he actually marked our history together with these monks. And Giussani said, why did they accept him? He could have become what he did become in a different context. It is the environment more than his mother, with whom he was one single thing, that asked for the help of the community, this profound sense of community and unity that was part of the way of thinking at the time, because this was not felt as someone who wanted to get rid of a burden, but rather to ask to another part of me what I cannot do by myself. So it is a very deep unity between the community of the Christians and the monastery, the cloister. It was really an entity, a social entity, a single entity. So what I saw in the story of José is that he created this community simply by being there, by serving his people with his profession as a doctor. And so this is what also the Rimini meeting does and what we are all called upon to do. Thank you.
Grazie mille, Chiara.
Thank you very much, Chiara. It was extremely moving what you said, and it is moving to see the different attitude that the doctor can have, as Chema also said, faced with pain and suffering, and how this sense of common good emerges, and this idea of living in a community, this new concept of a community that becomes a people. So Franco, I come to you. It's hard to ask you anything, so I want to ask you this. One of the aspects of José Gregorio's life that strikes us a lot is the vocation. So could you please help us better understanding this shift from the vocation to the creation of a people? It's an easy question, isn't it? So again, the question is always adjusted to, the recipient of the question itself. So I couldn't ask you anything less. Well, first of all, I need to say why I'm here tonight. Probably many people are asking themselves this, why I'm here on this stage. Because of the Blessed José Gregorio Hernández, I must confess, I didn't know anything before tonight. And I say it because this has to do with the testimonies that we just heard and also with the question that you just asked me. And first of all, I said a big yes to you and to our friendship, a very long-lasting friendship. And also I said a big yes to the curiosity that has always been in me after my first trip to Caracas. And at the time I met Marius' friends. I already knew them, but I had the opportunity to go there to talk about Dante, and also in Amara and Maracay. And well, I just want to share an anecdote because that meeting was so important to me. I became curious about Venezuela and its people. I feel so much in line that land with my land, my people, because when I went there, I was told that there was a woman from favelas who was at the starting point of this initiative devoted to Dante in Caracas. And she needed a diploma to be able to set up all that. And then she attended university. She had to write a thesis, and the topic was Dante Alighieri, and she had no idea who he was. And the topic was assigned to her. She couldn't change it, and so she asked her priest, her children, she asked everybody, and then she came across something I've done on Dante at that time, and she literally loved Dante, and so she got in touch with me because she really wanted to meet me. And she told me this, and that struck me. Well, I also did my homework, and I also studied a lot for tonight. I read the life of the Blessed, and I somehow recognized the spirit of this woman in his life. And I said, I met this woman, and I told her, you live in such a complicated situation. Why do you care so much about Dante? And she was surprised, and she told me, but Professor, why do you say so? Dante is so important. Dante talks to our heart, especially in times and situations like this. And she told me, she kept on telling me about the great interest of Dante. Dante helps us with his word, with his storytelling. So when I get in the queue to get some bread, and I stay there for hours and hours just to bring home 3 small pieces of bread and to give them to my children that are starving, I spend hours, and while I'm waiting, I take the Divine Comedy and I read it out loud, and the other moms like it. They got used to it, and they want to know where I'm standing in the queue, in the line, because they like me reading Dante out loud. And so I read Dante to all those people waiting for a piece of bread, because Dante and Dante's word help us live. Did I exaggerate? Yes, maybe a little bit, but this is like this. Okay. Well, if the person who invited you does not support you, well, there's something wrong. No, yes, it's correct. But you forgot to say that this woman usually, as well, she wanted to open up a chocolate shop. And, well, the cocoa from Venezuela is the best in the world, and she wanted to open up a chocolate shop, this woman. And so I got curious about these people, the people of this woman. And then I read the biography of the Blessed, and again I was surprised once more. And actually, I was surprised by many things. I just wanted to read a little passage, but we heard so much about him. I don't want to dwell too much. So I'm going to share the suggestions, the ideas that I got while I was reading this incredible life and this meeting with that man, with that woman, sorry, and with Marius and his family. And even when it comes to doctors, there's something important to be understood, because this evening happens at a very special moment of my life. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the age, and we have young people here, and I'm old instead. Maybe it's the age, maybe it's, I don't know, the disease, but you have to leave behind so many things that you used to do and that you can't do any longer. And so you are tempted to leave health behind, to deal more with, salvation, because what for struggling so much with health? You feel help slipping away. And, well, I must say that doctors do the worst job ever, because, so many people are dying, and I think that maybe the job of doctors, is doomed to fail at the end of the day. Well, but the story of the Blessed forced me to delve more into something that maybe is so interesting, something that has already come up from the things that the previous speakers said. It's the care and esteem that Jesus Christ has for a life of man on this planet, so that he became a man among the men. So doctors are passionate about health of people. They want people to be good, to be in good health. And what you said, Chiara, is really extraordinary, because this is the very same passion that God has towards our life. He cares for everything that has to do with us. He cares also for the body. He cares for even the hair of your boss, for the nail, for the heart, for everything. He cares for our bodies as a whole. We're so attached to material things. We have the courage from Jesus onwards to kneel in front of a piece of bread. So the story of this Blessed is incredible. He's a doctor, and he somehow is one of the many doctors that the church has canonized beatified over the last 200 years. This is like an enhancement. For centuries, there was a sort of Protestant attitude that went through the Catholic Church as well. And so the body despised for such a long time. But then from the 19th century, we have a change. There is Moscati, Hernandez, and we have many, many holy doctors and they were canonized just because of the way they experienced their job. So this is a hymn to incarnation, of the strict combination between body and soul, because we are a connection between body and soul. Nothing will be lost, not even the hair of the boss. So the blessed Hernandez spent his life trying to relieve the pain of the most marginalized ones and of the poor. And he has characterized and influenced so many generations of doctors also in our country. And there have been so many doctors seeing for free sick people. This is the same kind of things that we just heard. And this whole story struck me so much because this is really about re-enhancing and re-emphasizing the body and the material side of our body. And so we have lay saint doctors, so holy doctors or were lay. We have even couples, married couples. So for 100, 150 years, the church has rediscovered the sort of popular sanctity and holiness that does not reside falsely in a special holy saint who was a priest or a monk, but there's a comeback of this holiness of the love between a man and a woman, of the family, of friendship. And this is something that is really incredible. And so the story of Beato Hernandez, of the Blessed Hernandez, is in the wake of the story of these saints. So people who also decide to have a family and start a family. And out of 11 siblings, 6 decide to remain single to serve. This is incredible. This is something absolutely rare. People living in the world deciding to somehow try to do their best to sanctify themselves in the world. So the Blessed Hernandez created the people, and he did it in such an incredible way that, and correct me if I'm wrong, His Eminence, that the church had doubts about canonizing José Gregorio, because José Hernandez is really considered as a holy figure by everybody, even by, criminals. Or so the church was fearing a sort of spiritually oriented attitude towards this blessed doctor. But then, fortunately, the church understood that he is so holy that the whole people is celebrating him. So he's owned by the people because the whole people is really somehow connected with this saint. So, well, legend says that all saints are popular, but I was told, well, it doesn't matter if you dare to say something wrong against the blessed Jose, you will get in big trouble because he has become the icon of a unity that would be otherwise impossible. This is the real miracle carried out by saints. They save everybody, and blessed Jose really did it. He's a saint not just because he generates the Christian people, but also because this is through the Christian people generation, there is the generation of that people that will let the whole world people be saved. So we will go to heaven thanks to the merits of this saint and the other saints. And others will be saved because of the merits of Jesus, Holy Mary, and the saints. So again, probably many will go to heaven thanks to the merits of José Gregorio. So this is what a saint does, generates a people on this earth, but also the people of God for heaven. So they literally save the life of people. And the death of this blessed one, who just the day before dying says or writes, I don't remember exactly, I want to give my life for the world peace. And the next day, the first truce treaty is signed to put an end to the First World War, and he dies run over by a car on that day. So the next day, after having said, I want to give my life for the peace in my country. And then a very last thing that really impressed me. Saints are not perfect, but they give their life. They give their life for real. And so he expressed his wish, and God took his life 24 hours after. So they literally gave their lives, saints. And with respect to the education that I got, also within the movement, I think we can share an important idea. The correspondence we speak so many times is certainly, especially at the beginning, a very joyful correspondence, full of good, full of, of joy. This is the instinctual correspondence of the life that works, is the correspondence of the Kana miracle. So there's to eat, but there is nothing to drink. And serious God decides to do something, and it turned water into wine. But then in the next 3 years, he taught the very same people that it was not the end. So then the wine had to be turned into blood. It took 3 years to teach that. And that made even pain holy. He asked for this sacrifice of life for everybody. So the blessed Jose said it once, and our Lord took him seriously. And probably this is because of this sacrifice that he has become the father of Venezuela. I don't know. Certainly it was good. It must have been good. It couldn't be anything different. It was so daring and courageous to challenge the society of that time. And can I still talk for 1 minute? No? Yeah, okay. No. There's something that people neglect. I come from the province of Bergamo. We do not have the sea in Bergamo, and my village is called Balneario because we had the sort of Roman, terme, so the spas, and now we have a statue to celebrate that. And this is devoted to goddess Igea. And nobody knows that Igea was the Greek goddess of health. But having thermal baths, well, some people thought that it was the case to have a statue devoted to goddess Igea. But I remember that my mother used to ask me to bring a little handkerchief being blessed to then keep it below, under the pillow of my little brother. And I was sent to a church. I was not sent to Goddess Igea. So there is a whole culture that brings us back to the care for the body as something pagan. Instead, the care of the soul and the body is the same care that God has for us, body and soul. And we go to the Addolorata Church and not to Igea Goddess. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Franco. It's really moving to see how so many people, not just you, but all the people who were here tonight and that have visited the exhibitions over these days, have seen to what extent the Blessed José Gregorio was really to leave such an important trace. So, are peace and unity possible? Referring to the meeting for the peace amongst the people, and where everything starts through friendship among people. And friendship is not possible if there is no connection to the meaning of life. I will call you friends and not servants. And so again, because of this, José Gregorio encourages us to live our own faith and to keep generating people as he did. I just want to say that you can still visit the exhibition in Hall C3. The catalog of the exhibition is available at the bookshop. And I also want to say that the meeting let us build together this story. So please donate at the Donate Now desks so that such initiatives like this session and the exhibition can be organized to share proposals of dialogue and hope for us and for Venezuela and for the whole world. Thank you very much indeed. Good evening.
La civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Il senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale, non è un'idea, innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire, non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli.
Io voglio fare il palco prima. Diego, noi che microfoni usiamo quindi allora? Lettore. Fate un microfono pure voi.